Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I am going to be going through my April read and wrap up. So where do we start with April? April was an interesting reading month because I was taking part in 3 readathons: Realmathon, Eurovisionathon and the Magical Readathon. It got to halfway through the month and I was a little bit nervous that I wasn't going to complete my TBR in time because it was a slow start to the month. However, by the time it got to the end of the month, I'd actually finished 10 books. So I'm pretty happy with that, especially because I had a lot of 5 stars in April, and I think a few of these books might end up being on my favourite books of the year list, which is always good. So yeah, in total I finished 10 books, and as usual I'm going to go through my star rating for each book and then I'm going to pick out a few to talk through in a little more detail, but there will be timestamps in the description just in case you would like to skip ahead at any point. But the first 2 books that I finished in April were Ray Bearer by Jordan Ifueko and Redemptor by Jordan Ifueko. So basically the Ray Bearer duology, and I gave both books 4 stars. I do actually have a spoiler-free reading vlog for this duology if you wanted to check it out, because I go into a lot more detail in that vlog. But basically I enjoyed this series. I thought it was a solid YA fantasy series. I really liked the world building, and there are a few twists that I didn't see come in, but I don't think I would recommend this if you don't specifically read YA, because it did feel like a YA series, which isn't a criticism because it's not pretending to be anything else. But yeah, I enjoyed this overall, and like I said, I gave it 4 stars. I also finally finished the Wicked Villain series by Katee Robert because I read Queen Takes Rose, which is the last book in the series, and I gave this 3 stars. I don't know whether I was being a little bit generous, but I didn't hate the audiobook or anything. I was just mostly bored while listening to this. I felt like this had less plot than other books in the series, and I don't even know how that's possible because most of the books don't have a plot, but I enjoyed some of the earlier books a lot more than this one. So yeah, like I said, I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. It was just a little bit dull. I also listened to the audiobook for Spare by Prince Harry, which I didn't rate because I don't tend to rate non-fiction, and especially not biographies. However, I enjoyed this. I really liked the audiobook because it's narrated by Prince Harry, so I'm glad that I read it. But yeah, I don't really have many thoughts on it. It was just okay. Next I read And Every Morning The Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Fredrik Backman, which is a really short novella. I think it's less than 100 pages, but I really liked this. It was very emotional and it really packed a punch considering how short it is. I gave it 4 stars overall just because it didn't quite give me that 5-star feeling. I then read an arc of Yellowface by RF Kuang, which I gave 4.5 stars, I think. The Skeleton Key by Erin Kelly I gave 5 stars. Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert I gave 4 stars. Happy Place by Emily Henry I gave 5 stars. I think this was actually my favourite book of the month. The final book I read in April was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, which I did give 4.5 stars. It was almost a 5 stars, but I had a few little issues with it, which I will talk about actually. I think it makes sense to talk about Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow first, because this was the only book I think... No, that's not quite right. I was going to say this was the only book that I didn't vlog in April, but that's a lie. But I didn't vlog this at all. I actually started it with the intention of vlogging it, but this was on my May TBR, so my plan was to start it in April and then continue with it into May. That didn't happen because I read it within like 2 days. I picked it up and just couldn't stop reading because it was so compelling and addictive, and I really liked the story. We basically follow 2 main characters, Sam and Sadie, who meet when they're kids, and they form this friendship because they bond over video games. However, they end up not, I was going to say they end up splitting up. That's not right. They end up not speaking for a few years until they reach college, when they end up going to colleges within the same area. So they meet up again and they become friends again, and they start creating video games together. It's really a story about their platonic friendship, and it's about their relationship over the years, but it's also about the gaming industry. And I think that's what I liked the most, because even though I don't play video games anymore, I love being so immersed in a world where you just feel completely obsessed with it, I guess. The only comparison I can think of off the top of my head is when I read Daisy Jones and the Six, and how a big portion of that book was following these characters within the music industry as they were creating an album. I feel like Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow was a little bit like that kind of vibe, but with video games. Obviously it's a completely different writing style as well, but I did quite like the writing style in this. It was very immersive and it was just so addictive. It's set over quite a long space of time, so I think they meet during the 1980s, and then they're at college during the 90s, and then it follows on into the 2000s, and I liked the nostalgia feeling that it gave me because there was quite a few pop culture references where they would talk about real games that I remember. There was also quite a lot of discussions around sexism within the industry, because Sadie is obviously a woman in a very male-dominated space, and at times it was quite uncomfortable, but I think it was done deliberately that way. I think it's one of those books where the more time that passes, I think I'm gonna remember the stuff that I didn't like more than the stuff that I did like, which is why I didn't want to give it the full 5 stars. It was mostly the relationship between Sam and Sadie that was really frustrating. It was quite toxic at times, and I wanted to shake my Kindle as I was reading, but overall it did hit me in my emotions. There was one moment where I almost cried. Actually, I did cry. I don't know why I said almost. I did cry because I did feel invested in these characters. So I would recommend it, but only if the synopsis appeals to you. I think if you have no interest in video games, then you might find this a little bit boring. The next book that I wanted to talk about is The Skeleton Key by Erin Kelly, which, as I said, I gave 5 stars. However, it's one of those books where even though I've given it 5 stars, I don't think I would recommend this to a lot of people, because I feel like the synopsis is a little bit misleading, because from the synopsis I thought this was going to be a really fast-paced adventure story, but it's actually more of a quiet family drama. Like, it's a very slow mystery. It follows this main character called Nell, and before she was even born, her father wrote this book, which was basically a children's picture book, but it had these riddles kind of within the drawings, and people could solve these riddles and follow the clues, and it would take them to real places around England where they could find buried treasure. And this book was actually based on a real book that was around, I think, in the 1980s. Nell holds a lot of resentment towards her parents because of this book, because it had a really negative impact on her childhood, and because of that she doesn't really care about solving puzzles. And I think that's where the synopsis was a little bit misleading, because I thought this was going to be about us following Nell as she travels the country trying to solve riddles and stuff, and it's not about that at all. The characters were not likeable at times. However, I didn't really care about the characters because I was here for the drama, and there was plenty of drama. I would say it's a little bit too long. That was my only criticism, and it's the main criticism that I've seen from looking at negative reviews. I don't think it needed to be over 500 pages. Erin Kelly's writing is so atmospheric, and I loved how this had quite a few twists that I didn't see coming. If you like Ruth Ware's books, I think you might like Erin Kelly's books, because I've read 2 of her books so far, Watch Her Fall and The Skeleton Key, and they're a similar kind of vibe. So yeah, I'd recommend this more if you like a family drama and you like mysteries, rather than if you want a fast-paced thriller. The next book I wanted to talk about is Yellowface by RF Kuang. So this comes out in May, but I read an arc of it through NetGalley, and like I said earlier, I gave it 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite a 5 stars, and I think it's because I don't know if this is going to stick with me long term. I really liked the story and how it was so fast-paced and compelling and addictive. This basically follows a main character called June, who has this friend slash acquaintance called Athena, who's also an author. So both of these characters are writers, but Athena is much more successful than June, and June is jealous about that. I mean, June is not a very likable character at all, and at the start of the book, Athena dies in this freak accident, and June decides to steal her manuscript, rewrite it, and pass it off as her own. So that's the basic setup of the plot. We're following this main character June as she's going through the motions of publishing this book, and yeah, like I said, June was an interesting character because she was not likable at all, but I find it really interesting being inside the minds of characters like that and seeing how they justify their actions. It's a very satirical look at the publishing industry, so it talks about racism within the publishing industry, and there's some discussion around Twitter and the online book community and how toxic it can be. It's very different to RF Kuang's other books, so even if you liked Babel and the Poppy War series, I don't think it's guaranteed that you'd also like Yellowface. I liked all of them, so I'm not trying to put anyone off from reading this. Actually, what I wanted to try and say is that if you haven't read any of RF Kuang's other books, maybe because you don't really read fantasy, then I think it's still worth putting this on your radar, because I would really recommend this if you're interested in the publishing industry, or even if you just want a fast-paced, addictive read. The final book that I wanted to talk about in this wrap-up is Happy Place by Emily Henry, which I gave 5 stars, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of my favourite books of the year, which I was surprised about because I haven't enjoyed an Emily Henry book this much since Beach Read. People We Meet on Vacation I gave 4 stars, and then Book Lovers I gave 3 stars, and I was being a little bit generous. So I went into Happy Place with middle expectations. I wasn't expecting to hate it, obviously, but it is a second chance romance, which isn't my favourite trope, but it also has fake dating, kind of. It's basically about these 2 main characters whose names I have forgotten, Harriet and Wynne, who used to be engaged. They were together for a really long time, from when they met in college. However, they broke up and haven't told their friends yet. Harriet is just about to go on vacation with their friends, so her plan is to tell them then. However, when she arrives, she finds out that her friend, who obviously doesn't know that Harriet and Wynne have broke up, her friend has called Wynne and begged him to come on this vacation too, because she has something important to tell the group. Basically, like, I went into this book wondering why these characters hadn't told their friends 5 months ago, and I still kind of stick by that. However, I think it was justified in the main character's mind. Like, I could understand her thought processes. So even though I had to suspend disbelief a little bit, I was able to get past that. And I really liked the friendship group that Emily Henry created in this book. There were a lot of discussions around friendships in your 30s and how difficult it can be to maintain friendships in your 30s. I felt like I was reading about real people, and I almost cried towards the end because I felt so invested in this story, which, yeah, like I said, I wasn't expecting. Honestly, I almost gave up on Emily Henry after not enjoying Book Lovers, but I'm actually really excited now to see what she publishes next, because I really loved this. Like I said, 5 stars. That does bring me to the end of this video though, so thanks thanks for watching if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments, what was your favourite book that you read in April, and have you read any of the books that I've talked about in this wrap up? Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye!